Hey, so we're talking about leading through crisis. And this is actually a sermon or notes of a sermon that I preached at a local church just last week. It was a church, tragically, that lost their pastor, died after 15 years of being pastor of that church, and died 3 weeks ago. So they asked me to fill in the pulpit this 1 week. I was glad to do that, and I felt like I needed to share, where do we go from here? But at the same time, I felt like, hey, I'm an outsider. They don't want to hear from me. How can I speak with authority? I'm not sure if that's the right thing. So I did what I think was a good leadership principle. I went to the Word of God. I went to the Bible, and I looked for a situation in the Bible that somewhat resembled theirs. Organization, a church in crisis, not sure where to go from here. Church that lost their pastor. And when you do that, you look for a similar context, a similar situation, and you ask yourself 3 questions. In that situation, what did God do? In that situation, what did God say? And in that situation, what did God want his people to do? And so I found a similar passage in the Bible to their context, and that was Joshua chapter 1. Where Moses, the pastor, if you will, their leader, had just died. So this was a people, the group, the Israelites, kind of in crisis, kind of in transition, not sure where to go from here. What do we do now that our leader is gone? And I looked at that passage, and I asked 3 questions. In Joshua chapter 1, what did God say? What did he do? What did he want his people to do? And I took those observations and I gave it to the local church, but I also think they can apply to really any organization or church that might be in crisis mode. What do we do? How do we go from here when we're facing a crisis? So Joshua chapter 1, beginning with verse 1, very famous passage, God's kind of opening salvo, his words to Joshua, as Joshua takes command. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide. So that's how Joshua is kind of introduced to the reader. And take note of that Joshua is introduced and described in relationship to Moses. He is Moses' servant as we begin the book. It says, God says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. And as I was with Moses, so I will be with you, and I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And in those words, I found 3 things that I think can help us when we are leading in a group, organization, a church, in a crisis. And this is what I shared to the congregation last week. I said, number 1, we look at verse 2, where right up front, God's first words to Joshua are, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give them. Continue the mission. The first thing that God says to this group of people in crisis is continue the mission. Why were you working in the first place? What were you moving towards in the first place? Continue the mission. For the church, I went to their webpage, and on the big screen in front of the whole congregation, I said, this is your mission according to the webpage. If you want to know where to go from here, start there. So it's very simple math. The first thing we do is we look at who we are and what we were doing, and we continue the mission. That's what God said to Joshua. You started out on this mission to cross the Jordan River into the promised land. And even though Moses is gone and you are in crisis, you will continue on this mission, cross the river and into the promised land. Now, I can imagine that Joshua might have been a little overwhelmed by that tasking, if you will, and maybe a little nervous, maybe a little insecure. And so that's why I love verses 3 through 6, because the next thing that God says, and ask yourself, what is God trying to say here to Joshua? He says, let me get 3. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. So what is God doing here in these verses? What is he saying to Joshua? I think he's repeating the promise that he gave Moses so long ago. The promise that breathed life into Moses, God is breathing into Joshua now. And maybe God senses that Joshua is nervous and scared and insecure. And maybe God is reminding him of this promise. Maybe because sometimes in the heat of battle, sometimes when the chips are down, sometimes when you're not producing, sometimes when things aren't going well, we forget the promise. We forget the energy that originally drove us towards the goal we were moving towards. We forget the victories. And so I think what God was doing and what he was saying here was it's an important kind of proverb that an old pastor shared with me early on in my ministry. He said, Jim, don't forget in the dark what God revealed in the light. Don't forget in the dark when the chips are down, those things, those promises that God revealed when things were going good, because we tend to do that. We tend to forget those victories, those hopes, those promises, because all we can see is the darkness. And I think that God was saying to Joshua, hey, Joshua, I know you're in crisis. I know the Israelites are in transition. Don't forget in the dark. Don't forget right now what I revealed long ago that motivated Moses, that motivated you to walk through the desert. Don't forget in the dark what God revealed in the light. That's the second thing. So we got continue the mission. Don't forget in the dark what God revealed in the light. And then you have this string. If you look at verses really 6 through 9, 3 times, I'm not going to read it to you, but God says, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. He even ends it in verse 9. It says, have I not commanded you? Kind of wrapping it up. Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. Because he throws them in there for good measure. So the third point is very simple. Be strong and courageous with emphasis. Now, let's think about that. Here in Las Vegas, there is a really fun casino. Believe it or not, that's kind of a family-oriented casino called Circus. Indoor amusement park, circus animals, circus rides, circus acts, little kind of all the circus games and carnival games. Really fun. So we decided we were going to go there. And as we had our wristbands on and we were getting ready to hit the rides, I got to tell you, I did not say to my family, be strong and courageous. Another example. When we're ready to sit down at our favorite restaurant and dig into the family platter, our favorite food, Hafez Persian cuisine on Spring Mountain Road in Las Vegas, Nevada, free ad. I do not say to my family, be strong and courageous. I don't need to say that. But when I dropped off my son Derek for the first time at Clemson University, and as I was getting ready to walk away from him and leave him by himself for the first time in his life, with a tear in my eye, I looked at him and said, Derek, be strong and courageous. When I looked at the privates in basic training who were on their first day of basic training, scared, deer in headlights, I looked at them and I said, be strong and courageous. When my wife Carrie takes my daughter Tori out driving because she just got her permit for the first time, before Carrie turns on the ignition and takes Tori out driving for the first time, I will look at my wife and I will say, honey, be strong and courageous. Because here's the bottom line. You do not tell somebody to be strong and courageous unless you know that they're going to need to be strong and courageous. And the only reason why someone would need to be strong and courageous is simply because they're about to face substantial challenges. And so let the truth be told, when there is crisis in the organization, for whatever reason, like this church that lost their pastor, they're going to need to be strong and courageous because there will be challenges. Let's admit and face that. But God does something, I think, extra special for the Israelites, and I think for us. In these passages, he just doesn't say be strong and courageous and good luck. In verse 7, he says, be strong and courageous and be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. In other words, lean on people that you trust as you go through transition. You trusted Moses. Don't forget his guidance. Don't forget his words. Lean on people you trust. In verse 8, it says, don't let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night. The second thing God says is lean on me. Lean on God. Lean on my guidance, my instructions. I'm still here. And he emphasizes that in verse 9, where he says, do not be terrified, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. In other words, look for my thumbprints because I will be evident. I will be around. And it's almost like hunt for the good stuff. If you hunt for me, God says, you will find me and you will be encouraged. So it's not just simply be strong and courageous, but it's be strong and courageous and in the process, lean on people that you trust. In the process, lean on me. In the process, look for my thumbprints, hunt for the good stuff because you will find them. And so for an organization that might be in crisis, like this church that lost their pastor, I think God says three things to them. Continue the mission. Don't forget in the dark what God revealed in the light. And be strong and courageous. And in doing so, lean on people you trust, lean on me, and look for my thumbprints. That's how we can lead an organization through crisis. But I want to close by going back to Joshua. And in the beginning of this message, in the beginning of Joshua, again, remember Joshua chapter 1, Joshua is described in terms of his relationship with Moses. He is Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' servant. Well, at the end of the book of Joshua, after all of these challenges that Joshua needed to be strong and courageous to lead his people through, Joshua is described again in Joshua. Where is it? Chapter 24, verse 29. And there it is right there. I have it. Notice the change in how Joshua is described. It's now, after these things, this is Joshua chapter 24, verse 29. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died. He's no longer described or defined in terms of his relationship with Moses. He is now Joshua, son of Nun, servant of the Lord, described through his relationship with God. So I observe from that yes, there are challenges that we will go through, but these challenges we grow. These challenges are a process in which we become closer to God and better leaders. And that's what can happen to us as well as we continue the mission, as we not forget in the dark what God revealed in the light, and as we continue to be strong and courageous. So God bless you. Walk in peace. Have the best day possible and stay awesome.